Assalamu alaikum. This is Prince Waqar Ali Mirani from Sindh University Larkana campus. Class MA English final year. Subject Fiction 1. Concerned teacher Mem Chahat Battu. From the given syllabus, I have selected 4 topics. Here is the outline. First question: A Tale of Two Cities, Pride and Prejudice, A Passage to India, and fourth one is To the Lighthouse. Let's move to the first novel, Tale of Two Cities. Here is a picture. A Tale of Two Cities. Biography of writer. The author and writer of this book is Charles Dickens. Charles John Hotham Dickens was an English writer and social critic. He was born on February 7, 1812 in Landport, England. Charles Dickens was born to his father John Dickens, who was a naval clerk, and his mother Elizabeth Barrow, who was a teacher and a school director. Even though his parents worked hard, the family remained poor. He was a lower middle class boy. He worked in a factory when his family needed extra money. His works means he wrote 24 major novels. His peak of creativity and literary prowess was in his late career from 1848 to 1865. He was father of 10 children. He gave numerous talks across Europe and America. Summary of a novel. Summary of a novel. In this year 1775, England and France are undergoing a period of social violent disturbance and turmoil. Lucy Manet is a young woman who has been raised as an orphan and ward of Tellson's Bank. She learns that her father is alive and has recently been released from the prison after 18 years of unjust imprisonment. She travels to the French suburb of Saint Anthony with Mr. Jarvis Lorry. Mr. Lorry is a long-time Tellson's employee and had managed her father's affairs before his imprisonment. They find her father at the home of Ernest Deforge, who has housed the doctor since his release. Though her father is on the brink of instability, she solemnly vows that she will recover him. The family returns to London after time. The doctor begins to recover and resumes his practice. Though he occasionally returns back to his trance like state, he slowly returns to himself. Throughout the process, he and Lucy become extremely close. After a period of 5 years, Lucy and her father are called testify in the trial of Charles Darnay. Charles Darnay is a French citizen and London resident and has been accused of a treason against England. Lucy reluctantly gives Darnay because of his striking resemblance with Sidney Carton, a lawyer in a court. Darnay ultimately freed, and his circumstance draws every involved closer together. Darnay, along with Mr. Lowry, becomes a friend of the family, and Sidney Carton becomes a regular visitor. Sidney is not a welcome one. He is frequently drunk, often ill-humored and vulgar. Vulgar in his manner, though offers complain of Carton's manner. One evening he told Lucy that she is awakened feelings in him. She asks if she can help, and he says no, but that he wants her to know that cares for her deeply. Lucy eventually marries Darnay. A year passes. Darnay returns to France to attend the business. He pays a visit to his uncle. His uncle is a corrupt aristocrat and is so cruel that when his carriage driver recklessly ran over and killed peasant's child, he blamed the peasants for beginning in the way. Darnay's uncle is murdered at the Chateau when he was there. Darnay returns to England, and several more years pass. He and Lucy have a daughter. One day, Mr. Lowry tells to Darnay that he has received a letter addressed to a marquis. Everyone in care tells us. Darnay says that he knows the man and will deliver the letter. In the truth, Darnay is the Marquis St. Evermont, a descendant of a corrupt rulers of France. The latter is form of old friend who has been put in a prison unjustly, and who fears that he will soon be executed. Darnay realized that he must go. He leaves for friends without telling his wife. He quickly realized that the situation is worse than his could have imagined. A revolution has taken place. The peasants have overthrown the government and are murdering anyone who they feel represents the old guard. Darnay is immediately taken into the custody, though he tries desperately to explain that unlike his uncle and father, he is on the old peasants' side and wants to help them. They disagree his testimony, and none other than Ernest Defarge, who has since become a revolutionary, sends Darnay to prison. By this time, Lucy and her father have learned that Darnay has returned to France. Aware that Darnay is probably in grave danger, they reached France to help him. Mr. Lorry is also present, taking care of Tellson's French office. The revolutionaries treat Dr. Manet as a hero. This was a summary of this novel, Tale of Two Cities. So let's move to the third part of this question. Characters of this novel. The main characters in Tale of Two Cities are Sidney Carton, Charles Darnay, and Lucy Manet. Let's go to the first one, Sidney Carton. Sidney Carton is an outwardly cynical barrister who believes he has wasted his life. He ultimately sacrifices himself out of love for Lucy Manet and dies by guillotine in Charles Darnay's place. And the second question, the second character of this novel is Charles Darnay. He is a French aristocrat who has severed ties with his family. The cruel Saint Evremond, he risked his life to save Gable and is saved from execution by Sidney Carton. The third important character of this novel is Lucy Manet. Lucy Manet is a compassionate young woman who devotes herself to caring for her father, Dr. Manet, and eventually marries Charles Darnay. These were the three main characters of this novel. So let's go to the fourth part of this question, which is themes of the novel. There are major themes like class struggle, fate, doubles, revisals and inversions, family, social injustice. These were the main themes of this novel. So let's go to the second question, Pride and Prejudice. Biography of writer. The writer of this novel is Jane Austen. She was born in 1775 in a small town in Hampshire. This place is situated in England. She was one of 8 children, the second of 2 daughters of Reverend George Austen. She found time to write in her parlor during minutes snatched away from domestic duties. She never married in her life. She received her last proposal at the age of 27, which is recurring age in her novels. Charlotte Lewis, Anne Elliot. These were the novels. She is considered one of the most influential novelists of the English language. So let's move to the second part of this question, is summary of the novel Pride and Prejudice. This novel represents the love. This story begins from a side place, village Longbourn. In this village, so many families live, but from them, this strong. Sorry. So let's go to the second part of the question. Summary of this novel. This novel represents the love. In this story begins from a side place, village Longbourn. In this village, so many families live, but from them, this story is belong to the Bennet family. Head of this family is Mr. and Mrs. Bennet. Mr. Bennet is a simple and low talkative, but her wife, Mrs. Bennet, is uneducated. She has 5 daughters named Jane Bennet, Elizabeth Bennet, Catherine Bennet, Mary Bennet, Lydia Bennet. She is always worried about them because she wants to marry her daughters with handsome and rich families, and that time was so difficult to find such families. She always started thinking to see any handsome and rich person. Finally, they met with a rich and handsome person named Charles Bingley, and he also fell in love with her daughter, Mrs. Jane Bennet. And there, William Darcy, the friend of Charles Bingley, with the sister of Jane, named Elizabeth, but Darcy ignored her. When William Darcy ignored her, and the sister of Jane Bennet made her prejudice because he did not dancing with her. But she is wrong because he is not such kind of person who, and slowly she understood him, and they fall in love with each other and married. This novel has happy ending. This was the summary of this novel. Characters of this novel. Elizabeth Bennet. This the second oldest of 5 sisters and very devoted to her older sister Jane. Elizabeth is witty and intelligent. She mistakes Mr. Darcy's Mr. Darcy reserved character for pride and determined to despise him. Upon discovering his true character, she eventually falls in love with him and marries him. The second character of this novel is Fitzwilliam Darcy. Mr. Darcy is a wealthy man residing in Derbyshire. The second character of this novel is Fitzwilliam Darcy. Mr. Darcy is a wealthy man who reserved and proud. He falls in love with Elizabeth because he is intrigued by her intellect, independence, and playfulness. His love is so strong that he ends up crossing social barriers. The third character of this novel is Jane Bennet. She is sweet and good-natured. Jane is the eldest of this Bennet daughters and is very close to Elizabeth. She falls in love with Mr. Bingley, and although he makes back to London, appearing to mark the end of their relationship, they eventually marry. Fourth character is Mr. Bennet. Mr. Bennet prefers to isolate himself in his library, and he grows very much for his two eldest daughters, Jane and Elizabeth, because he has not secured a financial future for his family. After his death, his estate is entailed to his cousin, Mr. Bennet or Mrs. Bennet. Mrs. Bennet's main goal is to see her 5 daughters married, with the hope of that at least one will marry well. Loud and unrestrained, she is an embarrassment to Jane and Elizabeth at social functions. Another character is Mary Bennet. Mary is a third of the Bennet daughters and is much more interested in reading than husband's hunting. She is very plain and unsociable at balls and gatherings. She enjoys singing and playing piano. Fourth, she isn't good at either. Catherine Kitty Bennet. This is also the character from this novel. Kitty is second youngest of this Bennet daughters and is very silly, ignorant, and irritable. She enjoys walking into Meryton and flirting with the station officers under the influence of her sisters. Ladia Bennet. Ladia is the youngest of this 5 Bennet sisters, is flirtatious, immature, and reckless. Her silly and wild behavior results in her eloping with George Wickham, bringing a huge scandal and disgrace to the Bennet family. The last character of this novel is Charles Bingley. Mr. Bingley is Darcy's old friend and the owner of Netherfield Park. He falls in love with Jane Bennet, but is persuaded by Darcy that she does not care for him. Hull later learns that Darcy was incorrect and he marries Jane. These were the characters of these were the main characters. Fourth part of this question, themes of this novel. The first theme of this novel is love. Pride and Prejudice contains one of the most Cheshire-loved stories in English literature. The courtship between Darcy and Elizabeth is in any good love story. The lovers must include the overcome numerous stumbling blocks, beginning with the tensions caused by the lovers on personal qualities. Elizabeth's pride makes her misjudge. Elizabeth's pride makes her misjudge Darcy on the basis of a poor first impression, while Darcy's prejudice against Elizabeth's poor social standing blinds him for time to her many virtues. The third theme of this novel is Pride and Prejudice. Pride and what the fuck? The second theme of this novel is reputation. Reputation. Pride and Prejudice depicts a society in which woman's reputation is of the utmost importance. A woman is expected to behave in certain ways, stepping outside in the social norms makes her vulnerable to ostracism. This theme appears in the novel when Elizabeth walks to the Netherfield and arrives with the muddy skirts. The last theme is class. The theme of class is related to the reputation in that both reflect strictly regimented nature of life for the middle and upper classes in Regency England. The lines of class are strictly drawn, while the Bennets, who are middle class, may socialize with the upper class. Bingley and Darcy, they are clearly their social inferiors and are treated as such. This was all about the Pride and Prejudice. Let's go to the third question. A Passage to India. Let's go to the biography of this writer. He was born on 1st January 1879 and he was died on 7th June 1970. He was English novelist, short story writer, essayist and librettist. He was also known for his ironic and well-plotted novels examining class difference and hypocrisy in early 20th century in British society. He travelled in Europe with his mother and visited Egypt, Germany and India with the classicist Goldsworthy Laws Dixons. Forster spent a second spell in India in the early 1920s. After returning, he completed his last novel, A Passage to India, in 1924. His famous works are What I Believe, A Rome with a View, Howards and The Hill of Devi. The second part of this novel, summary of this novel. A Passage to India novel was published in 1924. It was selected as one of the 100 great works of 20th century English literature by the Modern Library. A Passage to India is Forster's last novel based on experiences in India. In this novel, Forster examines the conflict between Indian and British. The story revolves around four characters: Dr. Aziz, his British friend, Mr. Carroll Fielding, Mr. Moore, and Miss Adela Quested. During a trip to the Marber Caves, Adela thinks she finds herself alone with Dr. Aziz in one of the caves when in fact he is an entirely different cave, and subsequently panics and flees. It is assumed that Dr. Aziz has attempted to assault her. Aziz's trial and its run-up and aftermath bring to a boil the common racial tensions and prejudice between indigenous Indians and the British who rule in India. Let's go to the third part of this question, characters of this novel. The main character of this novel is Dr. Aziz. A young Muslim Indian physician who works at the British hospital in Chandrapur, which is said to have been based on the city of Bankipur, a suburb of Patna in the state of Bihar. He relies heavily on intuition over logic, and he is more emotional than his best friend Fielding. He makes friends easily and seems quite gruelous at times. His chief drawback is an inability to view a situation without emotion, which Forster suggests is a typical Indian difficulty. Aziz seems to possess a profound love for his late wife, but only thinks of her intermittently. Initially, he is somewhat indifferent to the British colonists, but comes to represent them after his treatment during the trial. The second character, Carroll Fielding. The 45-year-old unmarried British headmaster of the small government-run college for Indians. Fielding's logical Western mind cannot comprehend the muddle or mystery of India, but he is highly tolerant and respectful towards Indian. He befriends Dr. Aziz, but cultural and racial friends and personal misunderstanding separate them. The third character of this novel is Adela Quested. She is a young British schoolmaster mistress who is visiting India, which is vague intention of marrying Ronnie Heathrow. He is intelligent. She is intelligent, brave, honest, but slightly prudish. She is what Fielding calls a prig. She arrives with the intentions of seeing the real India, but after a frightening trip to the Marbar Caves, she falsely accuses Aziz of assaulting her. The fourth character of this novel is Mrs. Moore, the elderly, thoughtful mother of Ronnie Heathrow. She is visiting Chandrapur to oversee her son's engagement to Adela Quisted and hopes to see real India. She respects Indians and their customs, and the Indians in the novel appreciate her more than they do any other Briton. After undergoing an experience similar to Angela's, she becomes apathetic and bitter. Another character from this novel is Professor Godbole, an elderly, courteous, contemplative Brahmin who views the world with equanimity. He remains totally aloof from the novel's conflict. The another character from this novel, A Passage to India, is Mr. Turton, the British city collector of Chandrapur. He does not hate Indians, for that would be the negate his life's work. Nevertheless, he is fiercely loyal to his race, reviles less bigot people like Fielding, and regards native with thinly veiled contempt. So the famous characters of this novel is like Mahmood Ali. He is a Muslim barrister who openly hates the British. Also, he is Aziz's friend. Ralph Moore, a timid, sensitive, and discaring youth, the second son of Miss Moore, the Stella Moore, Miss Moore's daughter, and later Fielding's beautiful younger wife. So these were the characters of this novel. Let's go to the themes of this novel. The first and main theme of this novel is culture clash. And second one is friendship. Third one is ambiguity. And third one is ambiguity. These were the themes of this novel. Let's go to the last question from the outline. To the Lighthouse. The writer is Virginia Woolf. Biography of writer. Virginia Woolf was an English writer considered one of the most important modernist 20th century authors and also pioneer in the use of steam consciousness as a narrative device. She was born on January 25, 1882 and died on March 28, 1941. Summary of this novel. On the history of the sky in the summer house owned by the Ramsays, James is convinced by Mr. Ramsay that a visit to the lighthouse will happen tomorrow. Mr. Ramsay does not agree, citing the weather as the main reason. The situation becomes quite tense as a result of this argument. The trip to the lighthouse never materialized. The Ramsays invite all of the guests to dinner party. The tension builds further. Among all the guests, neither Mr. nor Mrs. Ramsay can handle even minor mishaps, such as guests requesting second helping or arriving late. 10 years pass. World War I. World War I comes and goes, and various and sundry things happen to the above-mentioned characters. Characters like Mr. Ramsay, Prue, and Andrew all pass away for the different reasons. Mr. Ramsay feels quite destitute without his wife to dote over the philosophies. Eventually, many Ramsays return to the original summer house, and Mr. Ramsay revisits the idea of taking James to camp to the lighthouse. The kids aren't thrilled and refuse to speak to their dad. However, James is surprised to hear praise instead of criticism from his dad. It becomes clear that both children feel differently towards their father. An important point in the novel comes from the sort of epiphany from the character of Lily, who on the way to the lighthouse has been struggling to complete a painting. Lily ponders that encouragement from a lady who struggled with her own overbearing husband. Upon finishing the painting, the Lily feels fulfilled, knowing completion was more important than legacy. Mr. Ramsay has yet experienced that some epiphany. This was the summary of this novel. So let's go to the characters of this novel. Mrs. Ramsay. Mrs. Ramsay is a loving and hospitable wife of Mr. Ramsay. She is highly domestic, focusing on her roles as mother and wife. She deeply admires her husband, although she cannot tell that she loves him. She is responsible and strong, but she dies unexpectedly in her 50s. Mr. Ramsay. Mr. Ramsay is dominated by rationality and scientific reason. He is in search of truth and greatness, and he fears that he is rather inadequate for not achieving his aims. Neither affectionate nor sentimental, he nevertheless inspires admiration in his wife, although she becomes irritated with his insensitivity. Third character is Lily Briscoe, a young unmarried painter friend of Ramses. She is extremely fond of Mrs. Ramsay and feels proud sense of emptiness after she dies. And the last main character of this novel is Charles Tansley, an odious atheist whom none of the Ramsays particularly like. Charles is one of the Mr. Ramsay's philosophy pupils. He is insulting and chauvinistic, trying to discourage Lily from painting. He is often concerned with the affairs, that status of other, and very self-centered he is. He finds Mr. Ramsay quite beautiful and is proud to be seen walking with her. These were the main characters of this novel. Let's go to the fourth part of this question. That is themes of the novel. This novel has most important themes like loss, art, transience, search. Let's go to the loss. Minta loses her brooch on the beach. Ramsay family loses some of its members. Art. The second theme of this novel is art. Also, women can do art. In this novel there is mentioned that also women. The second theme is art. Also, women can do art. Transience is the third theme of this novel. Nothing lost, but Mr. Ramsay doesn't want that her children grow up. The last one is search for God and for the true meaning of life. These were the main themes of this novel. Thank you.